Welcome to the Bird's Nest Podcast. I'm Joe Donahue. Thank you so much for joining us. Some may say that Christmas time is the most wonderful time of the year, but for Eagles fans, it's really any time that the Birds are in the playoffs. Eagles are birds of prey, and cheese is once again back on the menu as the Eagles begin their playoff push with a rematch of the season opener against the Green Bay Packers. To help us get ready for that game, we're joined once again by friend of the show and Eagles insider, Dave Spadaro. Dave, thanks for stopping by.
Joe, thank you. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. And go Birds. Let's go eat some cheese on Sunday.
Absolutely. Now, before we get into the actual meat of this game, playoff environments are so special, and the playoffs have created a lot of great memories in Eagles history. Uh, is there any particular playoff memory that stands out for you? Because I know for me, one of the formative memories that I have is 4th and 26 all those years ago. And I'm not just saying it because it was Eagles Packers, but I'm saying it because that was one of the earliest significant Eagles plays that really helped lock in my fandom. So,
I mean,
is there
clearly the Super Bowl is number one, and that that run in all three Super Bowl trips, 04, 17, and 22. It's funny, I was doing an interview with Eric Allen, finalist for the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He's the honorary captain for Sunday, and I went back and I watched long before your time, Joe, the playoff win 1992. Rich Kotite and the Eagles went to New Orleans and beat the Saints, and Eric had two interceptions, including a pick six, and it was just really cool watching the broadcast. It was a big win. Reggie White, I mean, all the great players, and that was my early days with the Eagles, and but along the way, all of them. And through the Kotite win, that was the first win they had since 1980. Then late the Ray Rhodes wins, and then all the Andy Reid nearly near misses, and just they every the playoffs are so intense, so special. I love having them at home, and of course, 4th and 26 was an iconic run for the Eagles. Unfortunately, ended the week after with a terrible loss to the Carolina Panthers. But yeah, I mean, I love them all, and this is no different. This season has been extraordinary. 12 wins in the last 13 games, a 2,000-yard rusher, a number one ranked defense, a young team that matured very quickly. So it is, as you say, the best time of the year, and let's hope it continues for another month.
absolutely. And I did want to take a look back, and you kind of alluded to it here. I mean, the Eagles have been just an incredible team over the course of these last several weeks. Going into the bye, though, they were 2-2, and they felt like the team that ended the 2023 season. I know I had a lot of concerns about that going into the bye, definitely a lot of uneasiness going into there. But it felt like we had a complete turnaround once we came out of the bye week and just went on this incredible 12 of the last 13 game run. Did that feel that way for you as you were watching this team, as you were around NovaCare? Did you feel like there was a complete turnaround?
Well, I think that you have to kind of go back and slow it down a little bit because it wasn't instant. If you remember, the win over Cleveland was not an impressive win.
Mhm.
Nick got a bunch of heat for talking with fans after the game. And then the week after, the Eagles go up to MetLife Stadium and Saquon has the huge game. And then it started to click. The offense started to get into a rhythm. The defense started to assert itself. Those wins against Deshaun Watson, and then the Giants and the minimal offense that they were able to generate um, it was kind of inserting Cooper DeJean into the defense in place of Avonte Maddox. You could feel it. Wins in LA, huge win. Clearly beating the Baltimore Ravens, huge win. Steelers steamrolling. By then, you're feeling full go. And so to me, it was a little bit more gradual. I think we all thought inside the NovaCare complex in training camp that this was going to be a really good football team, or at least had a chance to be a really good football team. As it turned out, it is a really good football team. So it just took some time for it to all click together. And look, you kind of get in the moment, you're kind of like stuck in a ritual, routine every week, and you don't ever really get a chance to kind of step back. And having this last week against the Giants, a game that didn't mean anything for the Eagles in terms of their playoff seeding, allowed everybody to kind of step back and kind of appreciate where the season headed and became and what this team is all about. So it was 12 wins in 13 games, Joe. I mean, at the end of the day, in years to come, you'll look back at 2024 and go, wow, that was really something amazing. We were also focused on the stories, the Saquon 2000, the number one defense, Jalen Hurts in the early starts with the offense, the first two draft picks making immediate impacts, that we kind of lost track of just what this team accomplished, I think. And to this point, what they've accomplished is putting themselves in a good playoff position as the number two seed in the NFC. But as we know, man, it's all about what you do from this point on, and that's how the season will be judged.
Yeah, definitely. That's going to be really, really important. The Eagles, as you alluded to, had last week, I called it a faux bye. It's not a real bye week because the Eagles still had to play a game. There's no extended rest period, but the Eagles used that opportunity to give starters that should have played or otherwise would have played if the game meant anything, opportunity to rest. But how important was that week 18 opportunity for players to rest? Because that doesn't always come around.
I think it was really important. I agree with you. How that manifests, we do not know, right? Like we'll see on Sunday. And I think one of the keys to this game, of course, is the Eagles offensively and defensively coming out fast and finishing strong. They've shown this year that they finished strong. Other than the Washington game in Landover, Maryland, they finished really strong in most games. So but I think it was very beneficial talking to the players in the locker room all week. The mood around Novacare is upbeat and energetic. So to this point, it appears that it was beneficial, but like we really don't know until the game on Sunday. But I've been around long enough. I've seen this happen, and generally, players benefit from the time off. They get a little bit more energy back in their bodies. But the Packers played their starters, the Eagles didn't. So what will that mean in the big picture? I don't think we know that until 4:30 on Sunday.
Absolutely. And that really kind of sets the stage for something else that I noticed here. You alluded to the Packers playing their starters. The Packers and the Commanders had the opportunity to swap seeds last week. And I think one of the things that speaks to the caliber of this Eagles team going into the playoffs and the fact that this team really seems to be the team to beat is that both the Packers and the Commanders played their starters in a attempt to not have to play the Eagles, it felt like.
Yeah, it was so interesting. The Eagles win the game. Sidney Brown intercepts the pass against the Giants. I'm standing on the field interviewing him for the boards in the stadium. And at that point, I kept looking up at the boards to see what the scores were, and I was convinced that it was going to be Washington. And then I go into one of the clubs, and on the TV monitors, they had half a screen with the Green Bay game, half a screen with the Dallas Washington game, and obviously both went down to the wire. And as it turned out, the Eagles played the Green Bay Packers. Um, hey, the Eagles are look. I really think this. I know. Look, everybody knows the Eagles are a good team, but when I look at the NFC playoff field, I think they're all really good teams. Like I think everybody in this field can make a run. And when we think back to some of the games the Eagles have played in the postseason, for example, 2022, the Giants went to Minnesota and upset the Vikings. So the Giants then came to Philly and they were shot by then. Minnesota loses Brock Purdy in the first quarter of the NFC Championship game, blowout. 2020 or 2017 season, Atlanta, it was a tough game, went down right to the wire, and Julio Jones isn't able to catch that pass at the very end of the game. Eagles win. Then it's Minnesota, and like they had an early lead, and then the pick six. So and that was a blowout. I don't anticipate that kind of game in these playoffs for the Eagles. I think the Eagles have a very, very tough road. But I think every team in the NFC has a really tough road. The Detroit Lions will benefit from having a week off and having home field in
Mhm.
Detroit.
Yeah. And even looking at this Packers team, I mean, you've got two of the top five defenses in the league right now that are going to go at it. on Sunday. It's going to be a real, in my view, it's going to be probably more of a battle for because it's going to be a defensive struggle between both of those two teams. So it's
Hey, I don't know
ultimately,
that. It's interesting you say that, Joe. I don't know. I can't predict that one.
yeah.
I know that both teams have ranked very high in turnover ratio.
Hmm.
Both teams have ranked high in takeaways.
Hmm.
Both teams ranked really high, 2 and 3, respectively, Green Bay and Philadelphia, in scoring points off of takeaways.
Yeah.
One of the questions that I've asked throughout the week, and it's been echoed by both Saquon and Lane, is what's the formula in winning the playoffs? What's the characteristics that define a winning team in the postseason? And it really comes down to, explosive plays, limiting them or getting them if you're on offense, turnover ratio, scoring touchdowns in the red zone, minimizing your mistakes. And there's a myriad of stats in the
Yeah.
NFL, right? But I think it comes down to that. And it really is the team that I watched the Minnesota Detroit game on Sunday night, and it was really revealing to me to see how Minnesota played in a pressure moment. They played a lousy game,
Hmm.
kicking the ball off out of bounds, missing a field goal, not scoring touchdowns in the red zone. That's the difference in big games when you have quality teams. And so the Eagles are experienced. They know the formula. They know how to win big games. But I really respect Green Bay. I respect that offense. I think even without Christian Watson, they can be an explosive group in the passing game. Josh Jacobs, of course, is a great running back. So it could go either way. It could be a high-flying affair. It could be a low-scoring game. You never know in the postseason.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons why the postseason could be so magical at times is I mean, thinking back to the Eagles Super Bowl run, the Eagles were counted out every step of the way because the Eagles didn't have their starting quarterback. They had Nick Foles coming in, and the Eagles strung together that magical run that many other times probably might not have happened, but that was the team that was able to put it together.
Yeah, it was great. And there's a little bit of that magic going on in Detroit. And so,
Hmm.
if the Eagles are fortunate enough to get there, or if Detroit loses and the NFC Championship game is here, the team, that mojo, that magic, that chemistry, that is something that is just, it's what Nick Sirianni talks about. It's the connection. It's the magical team element that often provides the difference here in these kinds of games and these kinds of seasons.
Hmm. One of the things that is on the minds of a lot of fans out there is the status of Jalen Hurts. Now, we got some hints over the course of there. Obviously, there's no final official decision yet. We won't know that until Friday afternoon once the final injury report comes out with the game statuses. So we won't know officially what his game day status is until Friday tomorrow afternoon as we're recording this, but it's looking more and more likely that he's going to play because we saw the team waived Ian Book, re-signed him to the practice squad today. He's had 2 full practice days at this point, based off of what I have seen coming out of uh,
It's true. Yeah, he had
report.
a full practice on Thursday.
Do we? He's going to play. We can expect that he's going to play. Do we think that there's going to be any kind of a rustiness to him after missing practice over the
I
course of
mean,
the?
that's the key. That's what he has. That's what the Eagles have to overcome. Look, they've had slow starts already this season. You can't have a slow start in the playoffs.
Yeah.
And so they've got to come out of the gates quickly. In Brazil, in week one, they had a slow start offensively. They had 2 early turnovers. The defense held Green Bay to field goals, red zone play. I just don't think that's the way to go about it in the playoffs. So, somehow the Eagles are going to have to come out and shake off that rust and from Jalen and get him into a rhythm early, get the running game going. And boy, it is so great to play with a lead in the postseason. It really takes the other team out of the ability to be multidimensional. So, Joe, that's one of the big questions. Getting this offense in gear early when that has been one of the challenges all season.
Yeah, that has definitely been a struggle. It's almost felt like the Eagles have been giving fans like the first quarter to be able to, get their food, get their drinks, go to the bathroom, make their way down to their seats, so that way they can be there when the team finally does click it on. There have been a lot of those kind of first quarters where the Eagles have struggled to get things going early on. And like you said, I think that's a big.
Got to play 4 quarters in the playoffs. Can't be 2.5 quarters in the playoffs. Got to be 4 quarters. In Baltimore, the Eagles started slowly. The defense held Baltimore. They were only down 9-0. Eagles came back and ripped it up in the last 3 quarters. I just think that is a very, very precipitous formula to play with in the playoffs.
Mhm. And as we're getting ready for this game, the coordinators, Nick, acknowledged this all week. How does this Packers team, how have they changed since week one as you've taken a look at them in the course of your own prep for this game?
Yeah, well, they're kind of what I thought they'd be, an explosive offense. Josh Jacobs had a terrific season, 1,300 yards, 15 touchdowns. Jordan Love appeared to take that step, but when they've played in games against really good teams, they've lost close games. And so do they know how to win in the fourth quarter of games? Look, I think that I am the memory is very fresh in my mind what they did to Dallas in the postseason last year. They went there and they just blew through them quickly, and Dallas never had a chance. And so they're capable of doing that. I think their defense is much better than people thought. Now, in the playoffs, can they overcome the loss of Jair Alexander? Their best cornerback. Look, Devontae and AJ had a big combined game, 12 catches, 200 yards plus, and a touchdown in Brazil. Can Green Bay slow the two of them? Hey, can the Eagles get in sync in the passing game really quickly? AJ Brown did not practice on Thursday. How much is there timing that needs to be reestablished with AJ and with Jalen? So I think Green Bay is kind of who I thought they would be. I thought they would be a dangerous team. They are. They won 11 games. Again, they have a very tough road to go as a wild card team playing on the road throughout the NFC playoffs. But we've seen teams overcome that and make it to the Super Bowl. I think this Green Bay team is capable of being that kind of team.
Dave, do you have any and it's fine if you don't, do you have any ideas for like a score prediction or anything? Obviously, I'm not going to ask you to pick against the Eagles, but
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm waffling. I don't ever pick a score. I mean, obviously, I think the Eagles are going to win the game,
yeah.
but I think it'll be a really close game. I think the Eagles need to score 27 points to win this football game,
Mhm.
and so something in that range. But it's playoff football. It's going to be a cold day on Sunday, although not as bitterly cold we think as late in the week here. Not as windy. The Eagles practiced at Lincoln Financial Field this week. It was very, very windy. So. I'm hopeful it's not that windy. And again, I just want to see the Eagles get off to a good start, get the crowd into it, and just play the best they can play. If the Philadelphia Eagles play their best football, they beat anybody in the National Football League at the line of scrimmage. Throughout, this roster is so deep, so talented, so solid. There's just it's just a team that's really been well put together and has come together so beautifully this year. So my prediction is an Eagles victory, but I do think it'll be a very close game.
Yeah, and I'm kind of right up there with you as you said that. I actually think the Eagles will probably need to score a little bit more. I think the first team to 30 points is going to win. Just
Well,
because of
hope it's
how
the Eagles.
important.
Let's
Yeah.
get that. That's what I mean. Let's score 30 in the first quarter and get it over with.
Well, Dave, thank you so much for taking the time. I really always appreciate you stopping by, especially in the middle of the this most wonderful time of the year.
Joe, I always appreciate you asking me, and I'll come on anytime you ask. So let's do it as we get through the playoffs here. And I think we all agree, go Birds.
Go Birds. And thank you so much to everybody for tuning into the Bird's Nest podcast. You can support the Bird's Nest podcast by liking and subscribing to Bird's Nest Media right here on YouTube, as well as on our social media pages, sharing to your social media pages. You can also find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Amazon Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app, and as of this week, iHeartRadio, as well as birdsnestmedia.com. And if you feel like supporting us in a different way, you can find the link to our Patreon in the description below or at birdsnestmedia.com. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let's go, Eagles.
Go Birds!
Go Birds! It's playoffs.